You may have matching baskets on the shelves, labeled containers in the pantry, and a closet that looks organized at first glance. Yet somehow, your home still feels heavy. If you are over 40 and already carrying a full day of responsibilities, the problem may not simply be having too much stuff. It may be the quiet work of managing it all. The sorting, remembering, refilling, moving, and deciding. Decluttering and organizing are supposed to make your home feel lighter, but some habits create more work than they remove. Today we are looking at 10 mistakes that can make an organized home feel surprisingly tiring, and what to do instead if you want a simpler, calmer space. A home can look neat and still ask for too much attention. You can have attractive storage, a place for almost everything, and shelves that photograph beautifully, yet still spend your day maintaining systems that never seem finished. That is the part people do not always talk about. Organization is useful when it makes everyday life easier. If a system needs constant correcting, remembering, rearranging, or restocking, it may be tidy without actually being helpful. As we go through these 10 mistakes, do not hear this as another list of things you need to fix. Use it as a way to notice where your home may be asking more from you than it needs to. The goal is not a perfect home. The goal is a home that is easier to live in. The first mistake is organizing before you remove anything. This is one of the easiest traps to fall into, because organizing feels productive. You pull everything out, sort it into categories, buy a few bins, add labels, and suddenly the space looks more controlled. But if you never asked whether you still need all those things, you may have simply organized the clutter. Think about a bathroom cabinet filled with products you barely use. You separate them into baskets for skincare, haircare backups, travel items, and extras. The cabinet looks better, but every item still needs space. Every basket still has to be moved, cleaned around, and checked. The appearance improved, but the amount you are managing did not. Decluttering first changes the question. Instead of asking, "Where should I store this?" ask, "Does this still need to live in my home?" That one change can simplify everything that follows. You may discover that one shelf is enough. You may not need 5 categories. You may not need another container at all. A calmer home often starts with less to manage, not a more complicated way to manage the same amount. The second mistake is buying boxes, baskets, or storage containers before you know exactly what they need to hold. Storage products are appealing because they make a solution feel immediate. You see a set of matching baskets, and imagine a cleaner pantry, a calmer closet, or a laundry room where everything finally has a place. But when containers come first, they can create a new problem. Now you have storage to fill. An empty basket on a shelf does not stay empty just because it looks nice. It can quickly become the place for things that do not have a clear home. A drawer divider may create categories you never needed. A stack of bins may make it easier to keep extras simply because there is room. Before buying storage, reduce what you have and pay attention to how you actually use the space. Notice which items keep wandering. Notice what needs to stay visible. Notice what is difficult to reach and what gets used every day. Then choose storage only if it solves a real problem. The best container is not the prettiest one. It is the one that makes an ordinary task easier. The third mistake is keeping too many just-in-case extras. A few backups can be practical. An extra tube of toothpaste or another bottle of something you use regularly can save an unnecessary trip to the store. The problem begins when backup turns into inventory. Now you are not just using household products. You are keeping track of stock. You have to remember what you already own. You need space for unopened packages. You may move older products forward, put newer ones behind them, or discover duplicates only after buying more. And because backups are often stored out of sight, you can have plenty and still feel unsure about what is there. A simpler approach is to keep an amount that makes sense for how quickly you use something, how much space you have, and how easy it is to replace. You do not need to turn your home into a small warehouse to feel prepared. If keeping extras helps you keep them, but if the extras create another shelf bin or list, you have to remember the backup system may be creating more work than it saves. The fourth mistake is creating categories that are too detailed. Detailed categories can feel efficient. One bin for charging cables, another for adapters, one for old phones, one for batteries, one for manuals, one for spare tech accessories. But every category creates another small decision. Where does this item belong? Which container should it go in? Does it fit one category or another? Does everyone in the house understand the system the same way? The more precise the system becomes, the more effort it may take to maintain. This gets especially frustrating when only one person knows how the system works. You may find yourself correcting where things were put, answering questions about where something belongs, or quietly reorganizing after everyone else. Simple categories are easier to remember. They are also easier for other people to use. Instead of creating the perfect category for every object, try creating the fewest categories that still make the space functional. A useful home organization system should reduce thinking. It should not create a new set of rules that you have to supervise. The fifth mistake is treating every empty shelf, corner, cabinet, and wall as unused storage potential. Empty space can feel wasteful when you are used to trying to fit everything in. You see an open shelf and think, I could put another basket there. You notice space under a table and imagine bins. You look above a cabinet and start thinking about boxes. But empty space is not automatically a problem that needs to be solved. Sometimes empty space is what allows a room to feel calm and function well. A shelf with breathing room is easier to see. A closet that is not packed tightly is easier to use. A kitchen counter with open space gives you somewhere to prepare food without first moving 3 other things. When every available surface becomes storage, the home can begin to feel visually full, even when everything is technically organized. And when every cabinet is packed, putting one thing away can require moving something else first. Try allowing some areas to remain intentionally empty. You do not have to maximize every inch. You need enough space for your home to work without constant rearranging. A clutter-free home is not created by filling every available corner efficiently. Sometimes it comes from protecting a little room to move. The sixth mistake is keeping things that no longer fit the way you live now. These are not always obviously useless things. In fact, they are often perfectly good, which is exactly why they can be difficult to release. It might be cookware from a time when you entertained more often, craft supplies for a hobby you no longer enjoy, clothes that belong to a routine you no longer have, decorative pieces that suited a previous home, equipment connected to a plan you never returned to. Because the items are still usable, you may keep telling yourself that letting them go would be wasteful. But useful is not the same as useful to you now. Your home does not have to hold every version of your life at the same time. When shelves and closets are full of objects tied to old routines, you may be giving valuable space to things that no longer support your current day. Organizing after 40 can feel different because life itself may look different. Schedules change, families change, energy changes, interests change. That does not make the old objects bad. It simply means they may no longer need a permanent place in your home. The more your belongings match your real routines, the easier those belongings are to use and maintain. The seventh mistake is moving clutter from one room to another instead of deciding what to do with it. You clear the dining table and move a pile to the bedroom. You clear the kitchen counter and place the extra items in a basket near the stairs. You tidy the living room and carry several things into the hallway because they belong somewhere else. The room looks better, but the decisions are still waiting. This is why you can spend an hour tidying and still feel as though nothing is truly finished. The same object may travel through several rooms before it reaches a permanent place, or before you finally decide you do not need it. When you notice yourself moving the same item again and again, treat that as information. Do you use it? Where do you use it? Does it have a reasonable home near that activity, or are you moving it because making the final decision feels harder than carrying it into another room? You do not have to stop and make a major decision about every object the moment you touch it, but repeated movement is a sign worth noticing. The goal is not to move clutter more efficiently, it is to reduce how often the same item asks for your attention. The eighth mistake is creating too many places for things to wait. One small drop zone can be useful. A tray for keys near the door, one basket for things that need to go upstairs, or one spot for incoming mail can keep those items from spreading across the house. The problem begins when temporary zones multiply. There is a basket for things to put away later, a pile for things to donate, a chair for clothes that are not quite ready for the laundry, a corner for packages, a shelf for things that belong to someone else, a tray for papers you plan to deal with. Each area may look harmless by itself, but together they create a home full of things waiting for a next step. Because the zones are considered temporary, they can stay for far longer than you intended. Instead of adding more waiting areas, choose one or two with a clear purpose. If something lands there, you should have a simple idea of what happens next. Temporary storage is useful when it moves an item toward a decision or destination. Otherwise, it can become clutter with a more organized name. Fewer holding zones can also make a room easier to read at a glance. You see the room itself instead of a collection of unfinished little jobs. The ninth mistake is storing things where they fit instead of where they are actually used. A home can look beautifully organized and still be inconvenient. You may keep cleaning supplies in one central closet, even though you use them in several rooms. You may store everyday dishes high on a shelf because the lower cabinet looks better with serving pieces. You may place frequently used items into deep storage because they fit perfectly inside matching bins. Then a simple task requires extra steps. You walk across the house to get something. You open a box. You move another item out of the way. You use what you need, then reverse the whole process to put it back. Those extra steps may seem small, but if they happen every day, the system starts to feel like work. Good organization should follow your real habits whenever possible. Keep frequently used things close to where you use them. Keep them easy to reach. Reduce unnecessary lids, doors, boxes and steps between you and an everyday object. Convenience is not a failure of discipline. It is one of the things that makes a system easier to maintain. The 10th mistake is treating decluttering like one large project that requires a free weekend, a perfect plan, and enough energy to transform an entire room. That idea can make starting feel exhausting before you have even touched anything. You look at a closet and imagine emptying the whole thing. You think about the garage and picture an entire Saturday disappearing. You consider the kitchen and immediately see dozens of decisions waiting for you. So you postpone. And the longer you postpone, the larger the job can feel. Decluttering does not have to happen that way. You can make one shelf easier to use. You can remove 3 items from a drawer. You can clear one small surface. You can notice one object that has been moved from room to room for months and finally decide whether it still belongs in your life. Small decisions still reduce what you have to manage. Homes change. Routines change. Needs change. A gentler approach allows you to adjust along the way without turning your home into a constant improvement project. You do not need a dramatic before and after moment. You need a home that gradually asks less from you. If your home looks organized but still feels heavy, the answer may not be another shelf, another basket, or a more detailed system. It may be less. Less inventory to remember, fewer categories to maintain, fewer temporary piles, fewer objects waiting for a decision, fewer steps between you and the things you use every day. That is the difference between a home that is simply organized and a home that actually supports the way you live. Start by noticing one area that seems to require too much attention. Maybe it is a pantry full of backups. Maybe it is a closet packed with things from another stage of life. Maybe it is the basket that has become a permanent waiting room for unfinished decisions. You do not need to fix the entire house today. Choose one small place and ask 2 questions. What can leave and what can become easier? Those questions are often more useful than what should I buy to organize this? Because the purpose of organizing is not to create a home that looks managed, it is to create a home that needs less managing. After 40, protecting your time and energy can matter more than maintaining a complicated system just because it looks organized. A calmer home does not have to be empty, minimal, or perfect. It simply needs to work for the life you are actually living. So if you have been trying harder and harder to organize, consider whether the next step is to simplify. Not perfectly, not all at once, just enough to remove one unnecessary decision, one pile, one category, or one item today. If this helped you see your home differently, subscribe to Calm Her Daily for more practical ways to create a calmer home without cleaning all day or carrying everything alone. And tell me in the comments, which of these 10 organizing mistakes have you noticed in your own home?